Hi, this is my shortest escape time leaderboard run on Subterrane, completed in 1 to 8 hours of in-game time. If you don't want the commentary, you can mute the video. The only other sounds are gunshots and the current background music for most of the video. This particular run is on the hardest difficulty, Nightmare, but the same route can be used on any difficulty with almost no differences. I also enabled permadeath to make this seem more impressive than it is. To begin, I want to play through the tutorial myself. Skipping it would take me to Central Control with 3.5 hours elapsed, even though I can get there in 2.5 hours. This also gives me the chance to get a shotgun instead of the pistol that I would have if I skipped the tutorial. Once I have a backpack, I remove my suit since I move 10% faster without it on. I don't need anything that it offers anyway. I drop it to manage my inventory better. I would have removed and dropped it at the very beginning, but I need a backpack to remove it if I'm using a controller. I play on controller because, personally, I can manage my inventory faster compared to using a mouse. This is the container that can contain a shotgun. It's guaranteed to contain one of the 3 gun types. Normally I would restart since it's not a shotgun, which is the only useful gun type in this run, but I got tired of restarting and wanted to give an SMG a try. Sitting in a chair restores stamina about 5 times faster than just standing. I ran through this area several times to test a few methods of managing stamina. Based on the admittedly brief test, sitting when I'm out of stamina gets me to my goal just as fast as simply walking when out of stamina. Purely walking is only about 20% slower than running when possible. None of these tests use shotguns, so always moving seems to be the best option in terms of in-game time. This won't happen often, but I want to do most of my inventory management during tram rides. I can't drop items in here, but I can consume food and drinks, and swap my weapons and quick items around. I want to keep my hunger and thirst below 70-ish, since I'll move slower or start losing health if they reach that point. I'm only stopping by a Central Control to move the power around, focusing on Viking Square this time. I want to get the level 2 research chip as soon as possible, since there are several items that I need to research that require level 2 specifically. While I'm here, I want to grab life support, of course, and the 2 guaranteed shotguns. Shotguns are the most useful because it's the most accessible gun type that knocks my character back when it is shot, so I can use it to shoot backwards and gain a little ground. Absolutely no killing is necessary in this run, so I have no reason to shoot anything otherwise, unless an enemy is really in the way. Now that you've seen a few loading screens, I'll do you a favor and edit them out from here on. In the end, I cut out over 10 minutes of the video doing just this. The ground floors of places like Viking Square are not random, but every other floor is randomized, along with what may be on that floor. This place has 6 floors, including the ground floor, and the research chip that I'm looking for here can be on any of the non-ground floors. This is probably the best time to do a crash course on this game's randomness. In the 8 sectors surrounding Central Control, every non-ground floor is procedurally generated, similar to modern roguelike games like Binding of Isaac. Because of this, my best bet at navigating them quickly is to be familiar with most of the possible rooms. This is easier than it sounds, since dead-end rooms tend to have a very different aesthetic than hallways. You'll often see me open a door and then quickly turn around because I can tell that it's a dead end with nothing that I need. Also, since the floors are only randomized on each playthrough rather than each visit, I can gain my exploration by exploring a floor, familiarizing myself with the important path, and reloading my autosave so that I can go straight to my goal. However, there is an odd case which you'll notice here, where floor 1 of a place will be generated again, even after I've explored it, but only the first time. Sometimes this doesn't happen, but it usually does, and I have no idea why. Software chips can be randomly found on any of the randomized floors. This is the most important chip to get on the first floor. I have nothing being researched nor produced at Central Control, so getting this chip as soon as possible basically lets me start multitasking as soon as possible. I returned to Central Control to move power around, this time to Carson Hotel for the engineering chip. I also want to start researching the research chip that I just found, which requires Herbert Research to be powered. While I'm visiting Herbert Research, I want to grab the keycard to the biosphere so that I can open it for the future. Since the exploration run of a floor isn't saved, I tend to be a little careless or even silly at times, if that wasn't obvious already. I'm not impressed by the SMG, by the way. I said before that sitting to restore stamina isn't any faster. However, sleeping in a bed both restores stamina faster and reduces stamina usage for a short time. Unfortunately, beds are rarely in accessible locations. Back at Central Control, I want to get materials to craft the research software that's about to finish researching. The most exotic material needed is an ore. I could get it by operating the mine, but that takes more time. Fortunately, there's also plenty of it just laying around the mine, so I'm going to go grab some. While the ore is being refined, I loot the east area for the rest of the materials that I need. This area alone actually yields enough generic materials for everything that I need. Once everything is gathered, I start producing 2 research softwares, since there are 2 machines. I only need one of the research softwares for now, and 50 minutes isn't long enough to really do anything, so I go to the biosphere to grab the shuttle fuel data chip. Researching this chip requires the level 2 software that's being produced now, so I start researching the chip once the software is ready. At this point, I can go to either District Pisces or Spirit Plaza. There isn't much difference between the two options in terms of time. I opted for Spirit Plaza. Technically, I only need the Space Center keycard from this place, and it's on the non-randomized ground floor. However, I also need some level 3 mine materials. I could get the level 3 mine chip, but that's a lot of time between researching the chip and actually mining the materials. Instead, I just loot the showcases here, which can give any of the mine materials. The loot is random, of course. This is usually enough for what I need, but I ended up a little short on neodymium in this run. I'll make up the difference later. With Spirit Plaza visited, I head to Pisces now for the level 3 Biosphere chip. Similar to the mine materials, I need biosphere materials. Unfortunately, I need 150 of each biosphere material, compared to needing only 50 of each mine material. In addition to needing more, the miscellaneous items that yield biosphere materials are much less plentiful, so I need to actually harvest them instead of just looting them. Finally, I need to get the navigation module from the Space Center, which is why I visited Spare Plaza first. This is a simple run to the north end and then back to the tram. However, there are showcases in the eastern area. Since I need some more neodymium, I loot these showcases to make up for Spare Plaza's lack of it. At this point, I have everything that I need to make everything that I need. Once something is researched, I produce it as soon as possible. In the case of the Biosphere software, I install it and immediately begin producing lemons and carrots in batches of 5. I make one batch of 10 simply because there aren't enough queue slots, and making 10 at the start of production doesn't cost much time, if any. I could simply sit around to pass the time, but the tram has a stronger fast forward feature, so I ride around in it to pass time a bit faster. This is very minor, but I want to grab the navigation module first so that I don't have to move the cursor when I'm putting everything into place. The final stretch. With everything ready, I head to the Space Center to take the last shuttle. Put the navigation module in, load up the fuel, and board the shuttle. If you're familiar with the game yourself, you may notice I don't have the IEVA suit. It turns out that for the leaderboard, the run ends here, so I don't need the suit. Luckily, my character doesn't care either.
After a short cruise, I made it to Mars Orbital Station. As I approached, a hail request lit up on the screen. A young man in a uniform suddenly appeared. Was he a soldier? Maybe Mars security? He asked for my name, and I hesitated. I am a murderer, after all. His eyes narrowed. His face slowly became a scowl. He was judging my sentence. Before I said a word, he cut the transmission. An ion cannon lined up with my shuttle, firing 2 blasts towards me. The first missed, but the second hit the shuttle square in the port side engine. The explosion ripped the ship in half. A flood of red warning lights swept over the consoles. I barely made it to the escape pod. I didn't even have time to eject. The force of the explosion propelled me away. Christ, I almost made it. Now, I'm aimlessly floating through space. Adrift. Forgotten.
Also, it is actually possible to complete the next part without the suit at all, although it's pretty difficult since there are so few landmarks. I do try it here and fail, but I'll splice in the one time that I actually managed to do it. Sorry about the lack of audio. I messed up the recording during this run. And there's the leaderboard update. If you remember my actual time, you'll notice that the minutes don't match up. It seems that the leaderboards don't actually remember the minutes in your time and instead copy the hours. You can rewind to see that my time doesn't match and that my record was different at the beginning of the video. Not to mention that all of the leaderboard entries show the same numbers for minutes and hours. Essentially, only saving an hour matters for these leaderboards. With perfect luck and the same route, I imagine that another hour could be shaved off. It's also perfectly possible that there's an even faster route that's possible, such as finding enough loot to avoid the biosphere chip entirely. The game is several years old at this point though, so I'm satisfied with its time.